Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Decision Hour. I am your host, Adam Bird, and I'm excited because new year, and this is the second episode of the new year, and I got a friend of mine, somebody who I recently met, was on his podcast that we're going to talk about here in a little bit. He's one of those people where, like, you know, when somebody crosses your path, you know that someone's special, and you know you're going to keep them in your Rolodex, and it's going to be super close. You might do a few things here or there. You could just call the person up just to chit chat. They'll listen. They'll give advice, and this guy here is become one of those people in my life very quickly. So without further ado, I'm going to bring on my friend Jason Skeesick. Jason, how are you?
Oh, Adam, thank you so much, brother. You honor me with that introduction. I appreciate it. And certainly I agree, man. You're on my wall. I have a network all-stars wall that I have written down in front of me right now. And your name's up there because I agree. I think in a world full of inauthenticity, it's pretty easy these days to identify when somebody's not full of it. Yeah. And you, sir, are not full of it. So I am honored to be counted as one of your friends.
I appreciate it, man. Yeah. I love what you're doing, and I want to dive right into it, man. You're a podcast host, you're a father. You know what? Tell our listeners a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so Jason Skeesick, I live here in the Indiana Dunes National Park, right outside the back door here. And so we live in this quirky little beach community in the middle of Indiana, which is kind of weird. It was recently described as redneck Malibu, which I like. I love it. Yeah, man, I'm a veteran like you. Spent 4 years in the Army as a network engineer and digging holes and pulling cable. And then I got out of that. And I did two things, Adam. I went to school for finance in Chicago to take over the world as a captain of industry, and certainly that never took place. But I also started a dusty CrossFit gym on the fourth floor of an old warehouse in Chicago. And over the course of time, that grew and grew with two great brothers and partners. Eventually I decided to make the jump to be a full-time entrepreneur, and really, really just super proud of the community and the tribe that we built at Bucktown CrossFit, which is still going to this day. And then at a certain point, had so much success being mentored by other folks as an entrepreneur, that I was, I took on the task of trying to mentor other entrepreneurs, and help them to find similar success in building tribes and building businesses for themselves. And have loved that so much that now that's what I do full time. So I have a podcast. Go ahead.
Yeah. How long have you been doing that since you made that transition from the gym to coaching entrepreneurs? Because you do a lot of that right now. That's your full time thing. Yes.
Yeah, that's right. So it was probably late 2017, early 2018, so almost 5 years. Yeah. We started by being asked to be a part-time coach just to help other folks to implement the systems, to get into the mindset that we had adopted when we were part of that organization, which was Gym Launch, by the way. Shout out to Alex Hormozy. He's doing great work out there. So we were tapped on the shoulder to be one of their part-time coaches. I'm nobody's employee. And then at a certain point, that company was growing so quickly, they had to focus on having only full-time coaches. And like I said, I'm nobody's employee. So respectfully, I declined that, and moved on to doing my own thing, just fell in love with it, man. I've never gotten off of a phone call with an entrepreneur and had less energy than when I got on. In the same way that I've never coached a CrossFit class and regretted it either. Right. I just get so much energy from helping other folks and watching them grow and develop. And I think of myself as sort of like a shepherd. I like to see people get where they're trying to go. So, so that's what I do now full time. And it seems like the more I do it, the more energy I get, just love it.
A lot of things are coming to my mind right now. As a coach, I want to start here. As a coach, is there something that you look for before you take on a business owner, before you coach them? Is there and I guess it's a two-part question, Jason, is like, this is what, as a coach, I'm looking for this, and I certainly don't want this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So a week ago, this answer would have been different, but I actually redefined it a little bit on Saturday. So I'll start with what I would have said, and I stand by it. I typically say that I help magicians, and that's folks who have magic between their ears, who've run through brick walls, who've worn all the different hats, and they just can't quite get to the next level. And those folks need to be helped, not by speeding up or adding, but by taking a moment, taking a break, and actually codifying that magic outside of their brain and into science. And now we can start to impact a team that can impact the world in a massive way. But I want to add that over the weekend, I was thinking a lot about the idea of climbing the mountain. I think of that as an entrepreneur, we're trying to climb our mountain.
Right.
And so it occurred to me just over the weekend that I don't tell you how to climb a mountain. I don't tell you what mountain to climb. It's so important to me that you're gonna climb this mountain. And if you're gonna climb this mountain, and whether or not I'm there, I want to help you.
Yeah.
So I don't want to help you if you're thinking about maybe climbing a mountain. But if you're like, hey man, I'm gonna go climb Everest, or okay, cool. Well, let's talk and let's see if we can help you get up there. Because the folks that I help the best, and the folks that take the advice and run with it and really build their own beautiful businesses and systems, are the folks who are like, well, I'm going to do this no matter what. But thank goodness I met Jason. He asked me some great questions. He gave me some great advice, and maybe introduced me to some folks that had done similar things in the past. Because the thing that I find to be separating those people that are going to do well and those people who maybe won't are the people who are going to do well had already decided long ago that they were going to be making a real effort at this thing.
Right.
And if those are your people, I'm your Sherpa, man. Like I can rock that all day.
I love it, dude. I freaking love this. You got a podcast as well.
I do.
Spear and Clover. You blessed me with the opportunity to come on to speak with your guests and listeners. Tell our listeners a little bit about Spear and Clover. What's it about, and then where people can listen.
Yeah. So Spear and Clover. So for starters, if you're seeing this on film, I have a spear and clover tattoo, which is sort of the logo for the business, but it's also like a personal symbol. And so it's a Spartan spear. And in the middle of it is like an infinite loop of rope. And the story behind that is one day I was out in the dunes here rucking, as I do with my dogs once a week. They'll go on what's called solo missions. And I was 11 miles with a 40-pound pack on and a 40-pound log on my shoulder. And I'm just head down, feet moving, military mindset, pursuing my goal. And then I got my 2 Australian Shepherds, and they're having the time of their life. They're running out into the woods, and then they come back and check on me. Then they're running out into the woods, and they come back and check on me. And it just occurred to me, Adam, in that instant, that at my best, that's how I'm going through life. I'm not just laser focused on achieving some big, hairy goal. I'm also taking the time to be playful and present with my family and my friends, to go roll jujitsu or do kickboxing or learn new things. And so because of that, I try to keep that ethic in everything that I do when I can. And at its best, and I think you're one of the folks that came on at their best, at its best, that's who I highlight as well. And so the podcast is all about highlighting those types of entrepreneurs that are out there doing really, really big things, but are also, well-balanced, interesting, dynamic individuals. And you can find that podcast, of course, on our YouTube channel, which is Spear and Clover, across all at audio platforms. And then, of course, we have our social media channels as well.
Folks, if you're listening to this right now, hell, you're already online. Open up another browser and go to spearandclover.com. You can also follow Spear and Clover and Jason on social media, and I'll have all of his links in the show notes below. I love the fact, Jason, that you're talking about, you making time for yourself, like doing these hikes and stuff like that. Like for me, the gym has been, I've turned back into a gym rat after a long break, we'll just say. Yeah. And it was like last, I would say it was the last May, 2022 is when I was going to the gym kind of just off and on, but it wasn't until my son came home from college. Then it was like, all right, the young man's getting a little stronger. It's like the old man's got to keep up. So It was, but it got me back into that mindset. And I love, because you're talking about doing rucks and really making time for yourself. And how important is that for entrepreneurs, and particularly ones that you work with and whatnot? How important is that to make that time for yourself?
I mean, it's crucial. In fact, I don't think if you're somebody out there listening to this and you're putting out fires every day and you're moving the needle forward and you're satisfying a client, or even if you're just an employee and you're just executing on the job, the problem with that is it stays where it's at. if I'm just tactical all the time, solving those problems, if I'm putting those fires out, there's no time in there for me. There's no time in there for growth professionally or personally. And so every single week, I recommend that people do two things in particular when it comes to what we're talking about right now. And one of those things is what I call solo missions. And you've been alluding to them, ruck marches. I go into a float tank usually about once a month, although it's been a couple months. Just taking time with no phone, nobody else around, unless maybe a dog or a baby. Sometimes I'll take Lucy with me, and thinking about my relationships, thinking about things that aren't going to impact the next 30 days, right? Yeah. Thinking about my relationships, my employees, the vision of where we're going, really getting an idea of like what's out on the horizon and are we still on the right path to get there? And then the second thing I do, I call a collective elective suffering. Shout out to Coach Robin Lalonde for giving me that one. But that's where we all get together and we do something that sucks and we go through it together. So that can be CrossFit, that can be jujitsu, that can be hot yoga, that can be a running club or a cycling club or hiking or rock climbing. But it's people getting together with common interests and common goals and doing something that is just way harder than what they would encounter in regular day-to-day life. And what that does is it just inoculates you to stress. You know, if your continuum of a good day and a bad day looks like this, and all of a sudden you start swinging a kettlebell for an hour or fighting somebody or, you know, running up hills, all of a sudden that bad day gets the continuum gets a whole lot bigger, which means those things that used to stop you in your tracks look like pebbles on the road now.
I love that. That's great advice. And those of you that are listening, I'm telling you, it's you have to make time for yourself, especially you business owners out there. And I know there's a lot of you that listen. Make time for yourself. That's the biggest thing I think Jason and myself are saying right now is I would say in the last year personally, there's been I feel like a completely different person now that I started making time for myself. Going to the gym was one thing. I recently started doing these cold dips, the ice baths and stuff like that. We'll save that one for another show. That one I'm learning that one a little bit more. But but it's you want to talk about stress and it's sucking. It does, but it's important. So make time for yourself. I want to talk a little bit more. You know, you think of you helping people, and there was something that I saw on your website about like dynasties, right? Yeah. And I think dynasties. I think I'm a sports guy, so it's like you think of like, you know, the Packers back in the day. They created a dynasty. I'm not a big Patriots fan, but they had a dynasty there for a while. The Cowboys. You know, and I'm just using football as an analogy. You could really think about really anything in your life and businesses and whatnot, but you're helping people, business owners, create a dynasty. And that part of it there is like, I've never even looked at it from that perspective. And I think that's the coolest damn thing that anybody has ever come up with. Because
that's a big praise, man. Thank you.
Because I think about this, and you think about this, it's just like guys like us that we serial entrepreneurs that create things. I wouldn't think of like, oh, you know, I would like this business to be around 100 years from now, well after I'm gone. And I guess you could say that's kind of a dynasty, but I've never looked at it in that perspective. So elaborate on helping people build a dynasty.
Yeah, so it's interesting. I went into a solo mission. I went into a float with sort of the idea of, you know, well, maybe I'll back up just a second. So I sold most of my gym in 2020 when we moved out of state. And I sold the part of my coaching practice that I was doing with entrepreneurs to my partner in November of the previous year, 2021. And so I took a year off and I was producing a podcast. I didn't have any clients. I didn't have any employees. I didn't have anybody I was responsible to. I just spent time with my family. I rolled jujitsu. I did kickboxing, and I talked to entrepreneurs like you every single day for free, just for fun.
Yeah.
And so I went into a float when it was time to start thinking about what to build. And I said, what would I stand on a rooftop and like beat my chest about? What would I fight over? And those things aren't sexy, Adam. They're like core values, setting goals, SOPs, like how to structure your business in a way where you don't have to be the one that drives the progress forward. But these are not sexy things. I mean, you want to talk about sexy things. It's like marketing and sales and maybe like equipment or like doing these cool things or ideas. And just frankly, those just aren't sexy things. And so I went into this float and it just occurred to me, there's one place where that's a sexy thing, and that's in sports. Everybody understands what a dynasty is. And to some extent, we even understand why it exists,
Right.
because the Patriots are a good example, or the All Blacks in New Zealand is another great example, or Manchester. These are organizations where not only do they get great coaches and they have great players and they have great playbooks and lots of money for the payroll, but really you see somebody like Randy Moss or Chad Ochocinco who's acting up, maybe not the greatest player in the locker room. They go to the Patriots and you never hear about them again being that way. And it's not because it's not the coach. It's because what they've done is they've incorporated their core values, their foundations, and then they have frameworks that allow you to bring in people, bring in a new fish and get them swimming in the right direction really quickly.
Yeah.
And so, yes, there's entrepreneurs that I can introduce you to that are bright flames that maybe can put together a team like the Jaguars, right? And come take a championship here and now and again, and then it dissipates. But these legacy organizations like the Steelers or the Green Bay Packers or the All Blacks, the All Blacks, every player has to sweep the shed. That's like a thing for them.
Yeah.
And so because of that, they realize that they're on a team together. There's a strong understanding of what the core values and what the mission is. And they make sure that anybody that's in that boat is focused on the same point at the end of the horizon, and they're rowing as hard as they can to get there. And so to me, like I'm kind of like hackled up right now just thinking about it, because that to me is what a dynasty organization is. And that's what our businesses should be.
Right.
Because if we're reliant on what's between our ears, if we're reliant on some amazing sales guy we stumbled across, or some textbook or some fire marketing play we bought from a guru, well, we may find success in the short term, but we're not building a dynasty. We're not building a legacy that can last.
And and here's the key thing that I'm picking up right now. Not once did you say, I'm doing this or I'm doing that. It's a team effort is what he's talking about, folks. And that was the first, I was like, man, building like just a dynasty. Like you think about that, like, oh, I would love to start a dynasty. You could start one. You're not going to build it by yourself. And if you think you are, hey, listen, you're in for a world of heartbreak.
Yeah.
I tell you that right now, because I think about businesses that I've run and what I call my 50,000 foot view and what I'd like to do. And I tell people too, I don't want to know everything. I want to know what I need for that business, but I don't, and I'd like an understanding of how that section of the business is run. And I'm the type of person, like, I'll go work in that section so I have a better understanding of it, so I know what to look for, what needs to be done. I don't want to run that section of the business. I want to find somebody.
It's not that you don't want to or you do. You can't.
There's two. Yeah. Listen, if you want to run, especially if you're trying to build a dynasty, you need people in areas that you can't do yourself. You want people that are better than you in things that you don't fully understand. And that's it's not always the easiest thing finding those people. It takes but it takes time. This isn't something that happens overnight. Like, let me ask you this: if you were to build Dynasty right now, how long would one particular take? What would you say?
That's a good question, because I think about it in these terms. It's like, let's say I'm trying to get somewhere really fast.
Yeah.
I can get in the car and put my foot to the floor and go as hard as I can and go the direction I think that I might be supposed to head.
Right.
And maybe I'll get there.
Right.
Or I can take 5 extra minutes. I can look up the directions. I can have a perfect map, and I can follow that map effortlessly and definitely show up in some order of time. There are definitely people out there who lucked into having the right intuition and going and taking the right turns and getting to the right place. Good for them.
Yeah.
the people that have the habit of really planning and executing in a real repeatable way. Listen, man, we're both military guys. This could easily have been, build your brigade or something, right?
Yeah.
Like think about like how difficult it is to like, what are you going to do to beat the 82nd Airborne? And when I say the 82nd Airborne, I don't say led by General so-and-so. I don't say with such and such at the helm of the 50 gun. I don't say with such and such master sergeant or must such and such, because they're all as good as the other for the most part, right?
Right.
Because and why is that? It's because in the military, just like in the All Blacks, you're learning the way that we do things, and then you're drilling it until you couldn't mess it up ever. It's not possible for you to mess it up. And so what I would say is, I have a guy that I hired, Mo. Shout out to my brother, Mo, who's my only employee in this business right now. And I could have fired 3 people in the time that we've been working together, training him and ramping him up and helping him understand exactly the things that he needs to do to energize his role. But instead, I've been patient, and not that he's done anything wrong, but I've been patient. When something isn't communicated correctly, I fix the hole in the boat. I update his SOP. We talk about the changes, and then we move forward. And that guy just executes exactly what he should every single day, because I've taken the time to scale my brain outside of my body into another person. That's not easy, Adam.
No.
It's something that requires discipline, and it requires a little bit of empathy, and it requires effort. But I'll tell you what, man, I would call what we have right now already a dynasty, because he knows exactly what he needs to do. I can be asleep and the podcast gets edited the same way I would. And he pulls the same clips I would. And he reaches out to the folks who, attended the mastermind and thanks them for coming, or whatever the things that he's doing. And so I don't think it takes long at all. I think you can not build a dynasty real quick.
Yeah.
I think you can drive your car off the cliff real quick, and then you could start over and do it again.
Yeah.
Listen, I think, we're men. And women too, but we're grown-ups, we're mature, right, is I guess what I mean there. And like, if you're finding that you're doing the same things over and over again, it's because the way you do one thing is the way you do everything,
right? And
so you think about somebody in the water drowning and watching somebody elegantly swim. It's easier to swim fast than it is to drown. You just need to know the right moves and do them.
I love that analogy. I'm stealing that.
Take it, man. Take it.
I'm stealing that. Man, you've given so many good nuggets already. I want to ask you a question. I ask everybody this question. The show's called The Decision Hour. We make decisions every day. Name a time in your life where your feet are on the line and you have to make that decision. What is it? And explain what the atmosphere was like for you at that time.
So, as I mentioned earlier, I was a financial analyst after college and running this gym. And a few years into that, for starters, I'm in this high rise in Chicago, and I'm working on $50 million deals and $10 million deals and $20 million deals. And all I can think about is my little $9,000 a month revenue business, that my little tribe that was, doing well. But for 7 years, we weren't really profitable. We were basically a jobby or a hobby, right? We were just keeping the lights on and making sure that the rent almost got paid, and got paid a couple days late and maybe a month late sometimes. And my 2 partners, who were also Army veterans and very, very close, they came to me. They had talked offline, and they were like, "Hey, man, it's time. We're men. We have women in our lives. We're ready to, one of them's moving to another state, and the other one wants to start a new endeavor for himself and build his life, and love that." Shout out to those guys. And so I had to go to sleep one night and imagine waking up in a world where my tribe didn't exist. And mind you, 7 years in, there's babies walking around whose parents met at our gym, right? And so I went to bed thinking about it, and I just couldn't imagine a world where I woke up the next day and that tribe wasn't there, where I wasn't turning on the lights and watching these folks come in and work their hearts out to become better people, and communing with each other and carrying that legacy on. And so I decided then to live from abundance. And what I mean by living from abundance is decide on what's important to you to achieve, regardless of what that means, what that takes, right? And then become the man or the woman who can go out and get those resources and build those pieces and create the scaffolding that will allow you to build to that point, right? And I think that's probably the best way I can put it. I could keep going, but that's probably a good way to put it.
That's Wow. That's a pretty in-depth decision hour. Thank you for sharing that with us. I can't imagine, like, and those of you that are listening, think back of a time where your feet were on the line. You had to make that decision, a tough one, where other people relied on you. We're coming up on time, but before I let you go, I want to talk about something else here, Jason. For the listeners that are out there and they want to get in touch with you, again, folks, you can find Jason at his website, spearandclover.com. You can also find him on Facebook, Instagram, all the social media platforms and whatnot. And again, those links will be in the show notes, so make sure you go check him out. Jason, you have a mastermind group, and if somebody that's listening, well, first off, let's talk about the mastermind group real quick. Tell us about the mastermind group, and if is that open to anybody? So if I got a listener here that is like, I want to do that, what are is there something that they need to do to get into that?
Yeah, our website whenever this goes live, it'll probably be up by then. But our website currently is still in progress. They're making some changes to it that'll include this. But we offer a free test drive for our mastermind. So anybody that would like to come and try and do it, I recommend that you're already have decided to climb the mountain, as I mentioned before. But if you are, head on over to www.spearandclover.com and check out the mastermind. There's a place there you just click and you can book a time to come in. What we do in the mastermind is we basically bring together like-minded individuals every single Friday, but on the first and third Friday of the month, we bring in an expert guest speaker, somebody like yourself, who presents on something that they are a subject matter expert in, gives us a whole new wealth of knowledge. It's like a private, personal, professional podcast, right? And then we get to ask questions. And then we spend 60 minutes in small groups of 4, masterminding and helping each other solve our problems. Friend of mine, Scott Ferguson, who you may know. Yeah, I knew you would. He talks about plus equals minus. And I really buy into that. I think plus, you should always have somebody that's mentoring you, somebody that's helping you, that's a little further up the path than you, trying to help you get a little further along. Equals, you got to have peers that you're masterminding with, chopping it up, being, close with and vulnerable and helping each other solve problems. And then minus, you got to reach back on the path and carry on that legacy of pulling the next man and woman forward. And so we try to do that. And I'll tell you what, man, we're building a digital city of bad entrepreneurs, baby. I got people in there that are everything from holistic OBGYNs to PhDs in finance, managing money. I got lawyers, I've got doctors, I've got cannabis coaches and CrossFit gym owners. But the thing that unites all of us is, number one, the pursuit equally of personal development, business growth, and social and family harmony. And then number 2 is every single session you're trying to help somebody solve a problem, and every single session you're trying to help solve one of your problems. And if you just live by that, man, you can go pretty far.
Freaking love that. Jason, I appreciate you spending time with us today, man. You have become a close friend very, very quickly. And from the bottom of my heart, man, thank you for everything that you do, man, because I love seeing your social media posts and everything that you're doing out there rucking. Sometimes, with the dogs or with the baby and whatnot. You're setting the bar high, and I appreciate that. So thank you.
Well, brother, I appreciate you. And if you're still listening to this, it's for one good reason. It's because you love Adam and what he's doing. So run over to his website, subscribe, and share this with a friend, because he's pouring his heart and soul out over here.
I appreciate it, brother. I appreciate it. Folks, that's all the time we got today. Again, I'm going to have Jason's contact information stuff in the show notes. Again, check out his website, spearandclover.com. Big shout out to our parent network, Heroes Media Group. Go check out all the shows, new content. We got some new shows going up over there as well, heroesmediagroup.com. Until next time, you've been listening to The Decision Hour.